Hello, this is Luke, and we're back with another episode of building a self-hosted analytics service from scratch. Let's get started here. First, we're going to run our script to launch the app. And here we're running the development server. We're running the client-side tracker script build. And we're also running a demo web service that we can use to test out the tracking script if we want to do that. And we're using this weave thing, which allows us to view all of the 3 different processes that we launched and restart them individually and things like that. Okay, so what are we actually going to work on today? Let's take a look at our notes file. I seem to recall that last time we basically wrapped up the user authentication subsystem. Just adjusting the mic, one sec. Okay. We basically wrapped up the user authentication subsystem, and I think we're ready to move on to something else. There might be some improvements that we want to do there in the future, but for now, I don't want to think about that anymore. So instead, let's think about something else. And what I think could be kind of fun to do is this page where you can view individual events. So let's launch the app and I'll kind of explain what that's about. I think we're on port 8000. No, that's the test app. We're on port 3000. Okay, give it a minute. The first page load always takes a minute because it's got to build the JavaScript bundle. Subsequent page loads can reuse the bundle. I think our password here is foobar, if I recall. Yes, okay. Okay, so here we are in our dashboard. If we look at the last 30 days, oh, okay, I was wondering why we weren't seeing any data because I did just open that demo site today. So there should have been one hit from when I just accidentally opened port 8000 instead of 3000. But because we were on this unnamed site, it wasn't showing up. So in the app, there's the ability to configure multiple sites with different host names. This unnamed site one we could actually delete. It doesn't really need to exist. Okay, that's interesting. Let's fix this then. So the use API, this is one of the good examples of why you want to just like try stuff in your apps, by the way. This is something that I always try to do, just like do things, not just use same testing workflow every time and you'll catch stuff. So the problem here is this use API function is returning rest.json. So it's assuming that the response is going to have a JSON response body. And based on this error, I'm guessing that our API call to delete a site does not return a JSON response. So let's actually fix that here. And let's, while we're at it, go through and make sure that all of our responses here are returning something with JSON. Technically, say you're deleting something. The HTTP status code response is enough to tell you what you need to know, which is, hey, it succeeded or it failed or whatever. You can tell just from the status code. The JSON response just needs to basically be like, okay, or something, So arguably, we could also update our use API hook to not require a JSON response. But I do kind of like returning a JSON response for everything. So I'm just going to do that. So let's take a look at all of these routes here. Just kind of go through them one by one. This one we can see is returning JSON. This one's returning JSON. JSON, 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 JSON. Are you getting semantic satiation of the word JSON yet? Because I definitely am. Change password returns JSON. Log out returns JSON. Log in returns JSON. Tracker, no script. Where even are those other routes? That would be this, right? This delete. So it should return JSON. Oh, but delete site itself returns void. So really, this should be, first we delete the site, and then we return JSON like status, okay, or whatever. The thing was deleted. Doesn't really matter what it is. Whereas like update site, for example, actually returns the updated site, right? Yeah. So that returned as JSON makes sense. Create site also returns the updated site, or the created site, I should say. And all of the other ones seem like that's fine. So this was really probably the only one that needed to be adjusted. All right. So let's take a look at what we just did to see if it works this time. Switches, well, I guess it deleted it anyway because we, the delete call happened on the back end. It was just processing the response that it wasn't happy. Let's create a new one for testing here. Example.com, add. Save changes, or no, get rid of that one, then save changes. Did they save? It's kind of hard to tell. Let's refresh the page. Okay, and looks like it saved, all right. So switch to unnamed site. We can hit delete, delete, and this time it works with no errors. Again, we really need some kind of more user feedback here in terms of how it works. But like, you know, if I click save changes, there's no like spinner. The button doesn't even really change to show that I clicked on it. So we should really be like popping up a little toast. And maybe that's something I can quickly add here. We can just kind of squash some of these little UX issues while we're at it. So let's go to the settings page here. Technically, this is just the settings component, actually. And what is this doing? Oh, so there's this site form component. Let's go in there. So in here, there's going to be save changes and delete site. And so the save changes, this is also interesting because it's type submit. So this is submitting a form. And then it's calling form.handleSubmit. So it's really in this form.handleSubmit function that we'll also want to, I think, use a toast, right? Or is that what we call it these days? A toast? Yeah. Toast. And we will just say site updated. Fine. I don't know what to say. We'll just say site updated. Okay. So now if I click save changes, we just get this little thing saying, hey, your changes were saved. Cool. Let's actually, you know, as we're doing these little bugs or little fixes, we should commit them individually here. So delete site, this is going to be make sure or make delete route return JSON response. Okay. And then we also have this one, which is display toast when user saves changes to a site. Okay. Very good. All right. Let's see if we want to do anything else here now. I feel like I want to get back to what I was actually planning on doing in the first place. So if we look up at this tab here, we've got this list of pages: home, user, settings. All three of these are pages we can switch between. And we want to add a new page here that I'm just going to call events. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to see each of these individual events. Because right now we just see these tables and charts, that show us aggregate information about them. And, if I increase the look back even more here, it's like there'll be a little bit more to see, kind of. And we can switch between visitors and visits, but we can't see, okay, like there was one event that hit this, like I want to see all of the information about that event, right? So let's kind of add another page here that's going to be another view into this data. So in order to do that, first of all, we need to update our router with a new page. So let's just kind of copy one of these. Actually, let's copy one of these because we want this auth wrapper thing on there as well. And we will call this events page. Okay, pretty simple, path/events. And then in here, this will be events page, which obviously doesn't exist yet. So now we need to create that component. Let's go over here, new file, events page.tsx. And again, just to get us started here, let's copy an existing page. We will copy this one. And we don't need any of the content of it really though. And we don't need any of this really either. So we kind of are just copying the structure of the React component like this. And get rid of all this. So we really didn't need to copy. I don't know if that saved us typing or not, but whatever. Okay. And we will call this events page. Okay. And we will for now just return. Well, let's see. Let's actually look at the home page here. So it has like this container and header. So we actually do want that. Container. This way it'll have a consistent look and feel to the other pages. Header. And that's great. And then we can just put like some events. Okay. Now let's use that events page here. And then this gets injected into the route tree. It's kind of a lot of boilerplate in here, a lot of different things to have to do to add a page, but that's okay. The other thing we need to remember to do is add it to our actual header. So it appears in our drop-down menu group here. So let's add another page here. We'll put it between home and user, and we will call it /events, and this will say events. Okay. So now if I click events, we get our page, some events. Hey, cool. It's kind of taking up the space of the header. I'm a little surprised about that. One thing is too, actually, we want to have that back button that we have on our other pages as well. So let's put that in here like this, inside the header. Oh, that's why I put the P inside the header. I didn't think about that. It should be below the header. And then it should render properly. Let's fix these imports. This React router, right. Okay. Okay. Can't be found. Why can't it be found? Reload me. Oh, I remember why that can't be found. It's another thing we need to remember when we're adding a page. It has to be added here as well. Yeah, it would be nice if we didn't have to remember all of these different things. But for an app this size, it's really not worth it to build some kind of page abstraction, especially for a single developer working on it. If this was something I was building for a team, I would be really concerned about the fact that we need to add these pages in so many different places and be like, look, there should be one source of truth, an index of all of the pages, and then we should be loading that up in various places. I mean, the more I'm talking about this now, I'm like, maybe we should just do that. Would that be so hard? I don't know. The problem is you want it to be available on the client and the server. but the component definition stuff could only really be on the client. I mean, we could do it. Let's do it. Actually, why not? Okay, so we'll add like a page index functionality to our dashboard here. Dashboard. Let's make a new file called pages. Pages.ts. And we're going to export first like an interface of our page structure. Let's think about how we want to define a page. Whoops, if I could type. Export interface. Page. Sure. So it's going to have a URL, of course, which is a string. And it's also going to have a name. Let's call it a name, which will be a string. We could also call it a title or something like that. And then it's going to have a component as well, but the component is not going to be defined here, I don't think. At least not yet. And then we could do export const pages, which is going to be a record, or let's do it as, I guess, an array of pages. So we would have one where it's like URL events, name, events, right? And we'll kind of format it like this. Oops. Yeah, we'll format it like that. So there's a home page, which is like slash, and name is home. There's events. There's user, I believe. And then there's also, what else is there? Login, and this user expired, which is kind of an interesting case, and settings. Okay, we've got a bunch here. User. Let's just put that in there for now. We'll call this password expired. Then there's also settings. And there's also login. Right? So these are our pages. Home, events, user, settings, login, password expired. Home, events, user, settings, login, password expired. Okay. So then kind of the cool thing is here, you know, instead of having these routes defined like this, we can actually reference that pages object, and we can say like ... no, ... like that, comma. And this would be pages, which is going to import that. And maybe I should not put that in dashboard, actually. Maybe I'll put that in, well, it's fine in dashboard, whatever. Pages dot reduce memo page memo page dot URL equals dashboard index. And then this will need a default value of an empty object. And then we need to return memo. And this would be reduce record page any. Right? What are you complaining about now? Oh, that's just a string any, right? I can get rid of this import then. Okay. That's cool. So now we should be able to get rid of all of these. And the app should still work, right? I think so. Let's see. If I refresh the page here, it still works. Ta-da! That's great. And we can still do our things here and everything. So that's cool. Now, one of the, well, let's just move on here. So now we can also use this same pages thing in our header here as well, right? We can do pages dot, and oh yeah, let's get the import here. Pages dot map page link item ref page dot URL page dot name. Okay, so this is, we're just saying for each page, render a link to that page. And we can see here now that the order of these pages actually matters because it's the order that they're going to be shown in this list. So I think this order is good. The problem now, though, if we actually refresh this and take a look, is we have our login and password expired pages in here as well, which we don't really want that. So what we can do instead is, we can have something where it's like, hidden. Let's just call it hidden. And we can use this to say, hey, don't actually render a link to this page. The page exists, it should work, but we don't want to link to it in the header. Or if we have like a sitemap or something like that, maybe we don't want to link to it there either. So here we can, we have this pages.map thing, and we could just do pages.filter page not page.hidden map, right? So this is saying take from the list of pages, take all of the ones that are not hidden and create a link for them. So now if we take a look at this, it's working the way we expect. Okay, so the other thing we can do here now is actually update our router to use these pages as well. So what will that look like? We will need a table of components for each page. Page components. And this is going to be an object. And we will have like slash, I guess, is fine. We can do it kind of based on the URL. One sec. Okay, so, and then we could say like the component is this, right? And then we could do the same thing for like all the other ones. Slash user, the component is this. And again, we could put these in the same objects as the pages themselves, but then we would have to import all of these components. And we don't really need to want those on the server side. Technically, we could import those on the server side, but we don't need to want to. Okay, I should be deleting these because I'm getting mixed up. So the index route, done. User page, done. Settings page is the next one. And that's going to be this. Done. And I don't know if this is really going to be how useful this is going to be. I'm not sure. We shall see. I like to try abstractions, even if I'm not 100% sure of their value. Sometimes it can just be a good learning experience. That's kind of how I'm feeling about this right now. I'm not 100% sure. An example of what I would be worried about is like, so these are functions, right? Which means they must potentially accept parameters, which could be like maybe the parameters of your page if it's something like, /ID, that's a parameter, and it might show up in your component here. I don't really know how that works with TanStack router. So maybe by building this abstraction, we're going to make the types harder when it comes to that. But I'm not sure, you know. And then login page, you know, is just, this one doesn't have the auth wrapper. Okay, so /home user settings expired password events login. So then we're going to want to do something like down here where we add children. We're going to want to do something like pages, page components, and I guess we could do like object.entries, page components, .map, and here we have the URL and the component function. And we can call this URL path for conformance with how TanStack query calls it. And this is going to return whatever is returned by create route. And we'll do get parent route. And we can kind of just copy this, right? And then we've got our path and we've got our component function. Okay, so now we don't need any of these other pages, definitions up here. And we've removed a little bit of boilerplate, this get parent route thing. And we've also made our yeah, you know, just kind of created this page components thing here. The problem is there's nothing that really aligns page components with pages. We haven't even imported pages in this file. What I would really like is to be able to solve that with a type. So let's see if we can do that. So I've got this export const pages. And what if I do something like export type page URL equals pages number. So let's just look at this for a moment. And we're missing a type up here. So what is this going to be? This should be, and what if we do as const? And what if we get rid of this? So now page, and what if I leave that back in? Okay, so we don't really want that type, I guess. So now page URL is like this thing. And if we also add in here a URL, now this is actually all of the URLs of the different pages. So then in our the problem is like with these, I wonder if there's a way to like, what if I do this, like const pages, page list, and then what if I do export const pages, page equals page list. This is an interesting way of doing it. As page. It won't even let me do that, huh? Is read-only and cannot be assigned to the mutable type page. Array page. Array read-only page. Is that going to work? No. I wish there was a way to get this to work. This is kind of one of the problems that I run into with TypeScript. I find it a little annoying. It's like you want to do something one way to make one type work cool, but then it kind of messes up some other types. Hey, Flava and Kale. Actually, no, we're done with the fitness app. What we're working on now is a self-hosted analytics app. So let me show you. The idea here is it's something similar to the analytics dashboard you would see in Versal or Google Analytics kind of, or Simple Analytics, which is what I use for my site. But it's a self-hosted app written with Bun that can be distributed as a single executable. So it's easy to install and use. And that's kind of the idea. So we've got this like analytics page here where you can break your traffic down by visitors or visits. And actually, just to make this a little more interesting, let me generate some sample data here. I think I have a script for that. Bun run script slash data. Yeah. So now, and if we look back last 7 days, this is kind of maybe a more realistic example of some sample data where we've got some fake visitors, fake visits, different pages, host names, device types, etc. And what I'm working on right now is a page in the app where we can see all of these events in more of like a table view. Instead of like aggregate data view, it's like you could actually see the individual events and kind of drill down into them and filter and sort them is kind of my vision for this page. But we got a little distracted from that, and instead we're working on this abstraction of defining our set of pages so that we can reuse this in different places without having to edit like 5 different files every time we want to add a page. The problem is I want to create this page URL type, which is a constant type array of all of the page URLs. But then the actual type of the page list here is not what I want it to be, because I kind of want this to just be like page, like that. But if I do that, then page URL is just a string because it's getting the type from page instead of the type from the constant array. So kind of trying to figure out a workaround for that. But I might just not. I wonder, so if I did this, pages. So the problem was this produced an error in header here where we iterate over the pages. Now it's really not happy. Oh, because I need to export this. Produced an error where we iterate over the pages and it's like hidden doesn't exist on every property, which is true. And I don't really want to have to add that to everyone. But I could. Maybe I'll just do that. Hidden false. Why not? And then we can get rid of that optional there as well. Okay. So now the header should be good. And now kind of the cool thing, or the reason I wanted to do that, is because I think now in page components here, we can define this as a record of page URL to component function, which, what is a component function? Route component. Route component. This is from TanStack router. And this way, I think if I leave one of these out, for example, I'm actually going to get an error. Yeah, it's like, hey, you need to define the page component for login. So now we actually have a type safe correspondence where when we add a page to this list of pages, it's going to be like, hey, remember to update the router. Yeah, I like the TANstack libraries too. I've started reaching for them in preference over pretty much whatever other option there is. Like for example, I used to use React Router, and I am using TANstack Router now, and I'm liking it more. Or I used to use like SWR, the Vercel library, but I like TANstack Query more, and so on. One of the things I think I like about the TANstack stuff in particular is that it's not very magic. Like to take this router example, like I have to do this thing where I create the route, I have to add it as children on the root route. There's like multiple steps here to get this stuff done. But on the other hand, it's like that helps you understand what's going on. And if something breaks, or if you want to do something a little more complicated, it's possible. Like for the SWR library, I was really confused about like how do I manually invalidate certain sets of data or whatever. Whereas with TANstack Query, it's like on the one hand, you have to manually invalidate the data. Like you have to call this invalidate queries thing. But on the other hand, that helps me understand exactly where and when my queries are being invalidated, and it just makes it easier for my brain. Oh, interesting. Flutter plus Rust stack, huh? Yeah. Gosh, I feel like it's a long time since I've heard of Flutter. What even is Flutter? Is that like the Google thing? Interesting. This is like a programming language, right? Or is it just a JavaScript framework? Looks like a programming language. Yeah, I've heard good things about Flutter. I feel like I haven't heard things about it for a long time, though. I'm kind of surprised that you would switch to it at this point, but maybe it's just not in the sphere that I've been in. Oh, Dart. Oh, right, Dart. Interesting. So, like, what's the benefit of that stack really for you? Not web UI, not transpile. Hmm. Oh, so it's like better kind of experience for native apps than React Native, as well as working. Does it work on the web? That's interesting. I have used React Native recently too, like for a mobile app, and it was kind of, I was like, I mean, it really helped me because I remember doing a mobile app back in the day where it was like legit Java, and it kind of was really painful. And the React Native was a lot better than that. I used Expo, the Expo framework, but it did also feel like, you know, a lot of just weird layers of abstraction that I didn't really understand, and certain things that I maybe wanted to do weren't even like possible in Expo. So, but yeah, that's cool. And yeah, it makes sense that it would be AI assisted. Pretty much everything is these days. I I use AI a lot at work as well, and it's like really helps things. I don't use AI on the stream at all though, because a big part of it is like for learning purposes and education purposes, and it's boring to just like watch somebody watch and Claude think or whatever, Zero experience with Rust before this year. Yeah, that's kind of fun. I've always kind of wanted to learn Rust, to be honest. I actually read a whole Rust book one time, and I was like, I kind of internalized the concepts, but I was also like, this is so complicated. I'm never gonna remember how it works unless I actually make some programs with it. And I just never got around to dealing with it at that level. But it's a really cool language. I like a lot of the semi-functional parts about it, like traits, um, or like the error handling thing where it's got like the exclamation point to just like be like, hey, panic or whatever if there's an error. I don't really remember exactly how it works, but everything's using results under the hood. I like the idea of like results plus syntactic sugar. Um, But yeah, mostly I still just use TypeScript. AI is a tutor for you. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I like that. Okay. So I think we're done with our page abstraction here. Let's actually commit that. Add events page and implement page abstraction. Stub events page. And so this way we don't have to remember to reference all of our pages everywhere we need them. Great. And then I'll get started on the actual events page itself. Yeah, the thing about AI as a tutor that sometimes gets me though is it's like, I mean, it works well, but it kind of takes a bit of discipline to use it in that mode, I guess, because it's easy to just ask it questions and just let it solve them for you. You know what I mean? Instead of like actually learning from it is sometimes a pattern I find myself falling into. But it is a really cool tool. I think there's a lot of promise to the AI stuff. I do also feel like there's, you know, it's like everybody uses it differently is one of the really interesting things about it as well. It's almost like you kind of get a little bit of a relationship with your AI and your AI tools. Okay. Events. So in order for this page to work, we're going to need to import all of our event data. Events equals use events. And we have this hook, use events. And kind of, you know, I was looking at this function a minute ago, but these use handstack query to look up the events. And then, you know, it only does that once. So I can use this use events hook wherever I want in the app, anywhere in the component tree, and it's not going to trigger a query each time. Only when we actually invalidate this query is it going to send another one, which is time-based. And with the events specifically, it's kind of interesting because, you know, this is usually data changes because of a user action in the app, right? Like you delete something, you need to update the data on the client to be like, hey, this thing is deleted. But the events are just coming in the background as users visit your site. So one of the things I want to implement is a server-side event stream that, or a WebSocket, I don't know, but I think a server-sent event stream is the way to do it, where when events come in, new events are created on the server, which by the way uses a SQLite database to store them. It will just send a little notification to any open clients to be like, hey, there's some new events. And then, you know, we could either query for them all again or just dynamically update our table of events, which might be kind of hard. But that would be kind of cool. You could see events coming in live instead of having to refresh the page. Anyway, but that's a future task. The win is being able to focus on patterns, architectural design, etc., rather than syntax. And you still get things done rather than telling your team you need to spend a sprint learning a new framework. Yeah, I do like that about AI too. It's like it can bring your thoughts up to a higher level of abstraction instead of being like thinking about how each line of code needs to work mechanically, syntactically. You can think about it as like, these are the abstractions I want to build. There should be maybe functions called this in a module called this. They should work such and such a way, that kind of a thing. And then it can kind of figure out the details of like how to actually do that for you. I would be a little hesitant personally doing it on like a framework I didn't know, because I would be constantly worried about like, oh, is it actually doing it right? Like how do I know? Usually I only use AI to write code that it's like I could have personally written without it, or that I can understand. But, I can understand not doing that too. Or it's kind of a fine line there, really. It's like you learn as you go, kind of, instead of taking that sprint to learn separately. It's like you can be creating code and learning at the same time, maybe is kind of how you're looking at it. I think that's a good way to think. Okay, so let's take our array of events here. We're just going to do something simple. Events.map event, and this will call this some event row component, or yeah, we'll call it event row. Fine. Event equals event. And obviously we'll need to define that component. And this is complaining because events could be null. Or no, it's complaining because this actually should be data events like that. And then also it could be null or undefined. Okay. Alrighty, so const event row, and maybe we'll split this out into a separate file later, but it kind of doesn't really need to be. This is a react.fc functional component, and it's going to accept an event, which is an event. Not that event, though. Do I call it a user event? Yeah. It's one of the things in JavaScript. There's an event type that already exists globally, right? The event emitter event, right? And so in my app, I have this concept called an event, but the actual type has to be called user event so that it doesn't overlap and be confusing. I mean, you could still call it event, and you'd have to shadow the built-in event type, but it's harder to get good IntelliSense and stuff that way. Anyway. And then we will return, for now, let's just return div event or json.stringify event. Sure. So now we can see all of our events. Oh gosh, this is weird. Looking at this page, somehow it's like, it looks like it's at an angle to me. Some kind of illusion. Like all of the lines are kind of tilted downwards as they go to the right. But anyway, these are all our, synthetic events that we created with that script. And we can kind of see here the different properties. So the site ID is interesting, actually, because we probably want to have the same filter at the top of the page for the site ID that we have in the other page. And then we don't really need to render the site ID. Like if we go over here, we've got this drop down to select. We probably want the same thing in our events page. So we need to remember to add that. The event ID, we obviously don't really need to render. The user ID, so the way this app tracks by user is based on IP address. So when you send, like you make an HTTP request, it loads the tracker script, and the IP address that loads the tracker script is hashed. The actual IP address is not stored. It's hashed and it's associated with a unique user. And this user ID is the unique user associated with each of these IP addresses. Then the URL is the page they visited. Start time is when they visited the page. End time is when they left the page. Host name, device type, desktop, these are all just like the extra properties on there. User agent is an interesting one because that isn't visible at all in the other page, the analytics page, but it could be nice to show here just so that people can see the actual agent. Okay, so let's implement that dropdown before we forget about that. So we can kind of copy that from the home page. And really we should abstract this into a separate function here, or component. So we have this select that's used to select the site name. And we're going to make a new file here called site select. Why not? And we will export const site select react.fc of something. I don't know if there's going to be any props for this or not. There will be, I guess, because there's going to be some kind of on change at the very least. And let's do return like this. And then, add the imports. Update import. Update import. I kind of need to be careful updating these imports because there's two places it can come from. So when you do add all missing, sometimes it doesn't work. Technically, once I do it once from this file, it should prefer this file though. So I could do add all missing and it'll work. Oh, that needs to be a colon or an equal sign. Okay. Okay, so here we can do const state equals use app state, if I recall. The state for this app is like it's persisted to local storage. This is basically like the client side, not exactly transient, but not exactly persistent, like it's not saved to the database state of the app. And it's exposed via a context, so any component can access it here. So the value is the app state. Looking at this, I'm like, actually, we're probably not going to need any props here at all because it's just going to be mutating the app state. And eventually we might need something special, but maybe not. And this all actually, I think, is related. Let's take a look at this, use our brain a little bit, even though it's hard, and think about what this means. So, okay, so we're getting our list of sites and our app state. And then we've got this like defaulting logic here, where if the app state is not present and there is a site, then whatever, I don't know, something, we're doing some kind of defaulting logic in here that, must have worked because we decided on it before and we never make mistakes. So that's great. And we don't need to put this in the home component anymore. So that's great too. We're really simplifying this. Actually, we do want the app state though, but we don't need anything else, I don't think. And then the select can go away and be replaced by our site select, like that. And that we don't need anymore. Okay. And then organize imports. Yes. Great. So with that, we can, let's just go back to the home page here, make sure this works well enough. Just for testing, let's add a new site actually. New site, add host name, example.com, save. Okay. So now we should be able to switch between these and it switches properly. Great. And then if we go to the events page, we can also add this here, site select. And now if I click on events, we have the site select here as well. And it should be persistent. So if I select unnamed site here and go back, then we get unnamed site here. Very cool. And one kind of cool thing you'll notice too is when I switched it to unnamed site, it automatically filtered the events. And that's because our use events hook is actually pre-baked to use the events for the given site. Wherever that hook is, I don't know, somewhere in here. Oh, it's right here, I was staring at it. It uses the site ID. It also uses the look back window. Oh, the look back window. I should have that in this page too. Okay. This hook is helpful. It's helping me remember stuff. Another win is asking the agent to come up with all the possible unit integration testing scenarios. Interesting. Yeah, I've had success with that as well. 100 lines of business logic and 3,000 lines of testing code. I mean, that's a lot of testing. I've had some modules like that too, but it was always a huge pain before the AI to like write, you write one module, but it's got like 100 edge cases and you have to test them all. And it's like, oh my goodness. Um, or yeah. Sometimes it's even weirder if there's like parallels and test cases you're trying to match or whatever. But anyway, but yeah, the AI helps with that. Although I do get a little bit, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't do a super good job of actually writing the tests, but it comes up with good test cases. But then sometimes it like tries to write the test and then it gets an error and then it just like, instead of fixing the code bug in the code, it assumes the test is broken and just like deletes it or something. but but yeah, it makes sense that it would help with finding the test cases. Probably writing them too. I mean, I imagine if you just prompted it right, you could get pretty good results with that. Something I haven't dug into too much. I actually use the AI mostly to write front end code, and I don't test my front end code, even at work. I just feel like, what's what's the point? I don't know. Maybe certain bits of functionality, it's like you can test, but almost all front end code, it's like the tests just end up being like, is the button there? Does the modal appear when you click on the button? And it's like, I know it does. I just wrote the code to like do that. I don't know. And it's like the stakes are so low. But the backend code, I always make sure to test. I'm pretty meticulous about that. Um, and the AI does a fairly good job with testing backend code, but I often feel the need to like get it to mock less functions and things like that. Probably depends on your code base as well. But but yeah, I remember back in the day, it's like you would write your module and you're like, okay, I wrote my module. All I have left is tests. And then you go to stand up and you'd be like, yeah, I just have to write tests. And then it's like, be prepared because you're only like 25% of the way through the card, the task. It's like, you've got to, it's going to take you another 2 days to write those tests. Anyway, okay. Why didn't you write the tests first? Oh, I didn't know what tests to write until I wrote the code, you know? We don't have that guy in our stand up, luckily, but yeah. I mean, I've heard that concept a lot, but I don't know. Does anybody actually do that? Like, how many people do that? I wonder. Okay, so I need to add a look back chooser. I guess I'll do it like this. This is the exact same way that I have it here. This is kind of interesting. It's very, very easy to copy and paste these little components in a way that I really like. Okay, so the look back chooser now should be there. Can it read properties of undefined reading map? What does that mean? I mean, I'm assuming it means that there's an array somewhere that's undefined, but where is this coming from? Events.page.tsx line 10. Oh, no, that should be a question mark. Why is that an exclamation point? That's not right. Okay. I let's switch to localhost here. So now if we switch to look back window, we get different data. So these are all kind of applying to this the way we would expect. Now we need to actually think about the UI, which is always my least favorite part. Shad CN UI. This is the thing that if I used AI on my stream, I would be pulling it out right now to be like, hey, make me a table for these events. But not necessarily legit table though. It's more like cards, a stack of cards. But it's not exactly a stack of cards either. It's like just chunks, you know? Usually I use like CSS grid. Let's go ahead and give it a shot here just with some raw CSS grid. Let's get rid of this. So what do we want it to look like though is a thing. That's what we need to figure out. So let's actually go to our mockup here and make a mockup. Kind of helps my brain understand what I want a little better. Let's copy this and plunk it over here. Not over there, or like that, yeah. And this will be the events page. So all of this goes away. And so, and really this box can go away too. So we would have an event here, and it would be something like there's the user ID, and we've got the page URL, and we've got the user agent, and you know, we've got the start and end time. So it's like start time. I'm not going to put, well, I'll put a number on it, sure. 2026, 03, 01, 12, 35, 41. And then the end time, probably we would call that a number of, like a duration instead. We don't need to say the end time specifically. We would say like 32 seconds. I'm just gathering these data elements, and then we're going to rearrange them here. Okay, what else do we need? So there's the browser, Firefox, the OS, Windows, the device type, which I guess would be desktop in this case, and what else is there? Let's look at our user event type. Events, or what do we call it? User events. What do we call it? Where is our, yeah, events? Why didn't that, anyway. Forgot host name. So we have device type, browser, operating system, user agent. We're missing refer, and we're missing host name. And no script, I guess. Refer is frequently not going to be present, but in the case where it is, it would be, I guess, another URL, right? Host name. I don't know if we need to include the host name, because it's going to be pretty consistent for the whole site. But technically, sites can be configured with multiple host names in the app. And so maybe including that actually will be helpful. And then, because the whole point here is to kind of give a comprehensive view of each event. And then the other thing is like no script or not. Okay. So these are kind of our main data elements here. The main thing feels like date, actually. Like if I did this, for example, the date in the page, and then we've got the user ID. I kind of want the user ID to be on this top line as well. These kind of feel like the top line elements. There's the user ID, date, page, and time that was spent on the page. And really, maybe this should be more like that because the page URL can be long. Well, I kind of like it the other way, to be honest. Okay. Okay, and then we've got, this is kind of the user agent adjacent stuff. Like that. And really, maybe these should be kind of over here like this. Desktop, Firefox, Windows, user agent. And then down here, we could have like no script. I mean, this no script thing could even just be like a little icon, maybe. We can worry about that later. Refer and host name. And I almost want these to be like little labels. Like, let's zoom in here a bit. What if we did like this, and it's like no script, question mark? And maybe this could be like a little smaller. And then we could have like a, you know, a checkbox or whatever, but I'm just going to do like a green circle to kind of illustrate it's a Boolean thing. Then similar to this, we would have like referrer, which would be this, because this is again going to be something that frequently doesn't even exist. So we would just hide this little card if it doesn't exist. And it would go like up here next to that, like that. And then host name. Maybe, okay. Maybe we actually want to do it kind of like this. We could have host name. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Text me. Host name. And yeah, not like that, like that. Is that. And then let's get those out of the way for a moment. User agent. Is that? Excalibur on VS Code. Yeah, this is like there's a VS Code plugin for it. Whatever, one of these plugins. There it is. One of the cool things about Excalibur is because it's like an actual, it's a fully client-side and open source app. It can be embedded anywhere you can embed HTML basically and JavaScript, obviously. So there's like Excalibur plugins for VS Code. There's also like Excalibur plugins for Obsidian, if you've ever used Obsidian for note-taking. So it's kind of cool. Obviously, you don't get like the persistent backend that you do from the Excalidraw site, but you know, it just, you save it as a file. It works the same way. But yeah, I like to use it for these kinds of like UI fiddling where I could be doing it in code, but then I would just be like iterating like crazy and annoying myself. Okay, let's also make these a little smaller here. And so kind of the idea here is it's like, hey, there's a host name, there's the user agent, and then these things are like properties of the user agent, right? Like they're related to it. So I'm going to put those kind of there. These values are actually, they're not just related to the user agent, they're actually parsed out of it. That's how we tell like, oh, this is a Firefox Windows desktop, is by looking at the user agent. There might be other better ways of doing that fingerprinting, but this particular app is not very smart about that. It just parses out the user agent. Okay, and then we would have our refer. You know, that's kind of nice now because we have this visual pattern for adding new fields. Refer goes there. And then no script. The no script thing, I actually want to put, so kind of an interesting thing here is if there, so let's look at the tracker for a moment. This is our tracking script. It's really simple. Basically, there's two things. First of all, we record the event that the user visited the page. And we're using this send beacon thing, which just sends off a request. It's specifically for analytics. And, you know, again, maybe there's like some old browsers that don't support this or something. The point of this app is not necessarily to be like absolute 100% capturing every single user like a really professional analytics app would. It's more just like, we just want, you know, we want the numbers. If we're missing one or two users who are still using like IE6 behind their corporate firewall or whatever, like, who cares? We just want a sense. At least that's, you know, kind of how I'm approaching it. Eventually, we could maybe add some more complexity here for backwards compatibility too, but it's just not a priority yet. And then, anyway, what I wanted to point out is this visibility change thing here. So this is what gives us our time on the page. When the visibility change becomes hidden, like if you switch off of the tab or you close the tab, then it's actually going to run this thing and pop off this event as well to say, hey, the user's done. So that's how we can know how long the user was on the page. Obviously, though, this will not work for no script events. So this number here is never, it's going to be 0 or like a dash or whatever for no script events. So what we could do is just put the no script indication right there. Okay, that looks weird. That also looks really weird. This should be, let's make it a rectangle. Rectangle. And that's fine, whatever. And then in there, we will put our text, no script. I'm capitalizing it like the old Firefox extension. It's funny, just like ingrained in my brain. And, you know, we could group these, make it a little object. It would be kind of like that. Something like that. I don't know. Okay. And then kind of the idea would be that these events can probably collapse or something. You know, like we would probably have like a little box over here with like a plus in it. It won't. It's get that back to that, and then put a plus in it like this, plus, you know, something like that, except I guess it would be a minus because it's expanded. Whatever. The exact UI element is not necessarily going to look like that. This is just kind of showing us that, hey, this is like an expanded chunk. And then there would be down here, we could have another example of like a collapsed chunk with like this. Let's like copy this. Like that. Okay, something like that. Really simple, but at least now we have a sense of what we're trying to build. So now let's build it. And I might even just kind of bring this over to the side here so that we can reference it while we build. Okay, so let's look at our events page. So each of these events row, we now know we're going to want first, we're kind of going to build this up piece by piece. First, the event ID, or user ID, I mean, user ID. Then we're going to want the start date, right? Event.start time. And we're going to need to format this. So how would we do that? New date. We'll just do it in kind of a naive way for now. Dot to ISO string. Then we want the URL, event.url. And then we want the time. So let's do const duration equals event dot end time minus event dot start time. Event dot end time. If there is it, then we'll do this. Otherwise, no. Okay. So I'm trying to remember. So let me look at our package.json here. What do we have a date library? Did we pull in any date libraries in here? No, we did not. That's fine. Who needs them, right? Who needs a date library? On another project that I'm working on, I've started using the date fns library. I actually like that one quite a bit because unlike Moment or Luxon or whatever, it doesn't have a whole separate date structure from JavaScript. It's just like a bunch of convenient utility functions. It's like Lodash for dates or whatever, if you remember Lodash. It's funny how old, long ago Lodash themes. I remember when that was like the coolest thing. Man, I'm starting to get old. At least in programmer time. Everything moves too quickly. Okay. Then we want our duration thing. So there would be like div. Well, let's actually, yeah, no, that's fine. And then here we could say like duration equals null, question mark. Then we're going to put some kind of no script tag. No script. Otherwise, we're going to put, and let me just put this in a div actually. No script. And I'll call out as well that this is not actually a good way to do it. So the problem is there's times when the duration might be null, even though it's not a no script. Something could have happened where we never get that visibility change event triggering. or it triggers and it just gets lost in the internet, right? This is a distributed system. There's no guarantee that we're going to receive that HTTP request finishing the event. So really we have three cases here. No script, duration is null and not no script, and when the duration is not null. So let's do that. So first we have like event.no script. If that's true, then we render this. Otherwise, if duration is null, then we render just a dash or something. Or NA or whatever. Finally, we would render our actual date. And let's save this so it formats. Okay. And then this would be like something. Let's just do duration. Let's do duration divided by 1000 S. And we do have, by the way, in our notes, a thing to have better human readable time view rendering, which is talking about this as well. We'll probably need to pull in a library when we get to that. Okay. So this is cool. This is kind of like our first line here, right? And we would kind of probably do this. I did say a div, or a grid, but really this could be just like a flex for now. And we can make it different later if we want to, right? Flex, flex, row, flex, no wrap, probably. Well, I can wrap, why not? Wrap if you want to. You can leave your friends behind because your friends don't wrap, and if they don't wrap, then they're no friends of mine. Oh, okay. Got a spammer in chat, 1 sec. Okay. And then, what was I doing? That's fine. That's probably fine. And then this URI is kind of the thing that we're going to want to have take up the space. So it would be like class. Oh, one thing I want to do here is like gap 1. And this would be like flex grow. Flex 1, flex, flex. What are our options here? Flex auto? No. Is it just grow? Yeah, okay. Grow. Okay. And then these other ones will not grow. And I kind of want to give them a fixed width as well. Like W5 for user ID. Maybe it should be W10. And the one below it, we can do let's just do W10 for all of them and see what that looks like for now. Okay. Let's see what our app is doing. Okay, so obviously W10 is way too small for the date. Should have seen that coming. I mean, I kind of did see that coming, but got to start somewhere, right? 32 is going to be way too big. No, it's not too big, actually. Not at all. Stop switching me to unnamed site when I refresh. I don't even need to refresh. I just keep clicking on that out of habit. 64. Fine. Maybe I would do 48. Fine. It's kind of tight. And really, to locale string. It's probably going to look a little better. And I don't like that these are all no script. That's something I have to update in my script, I guess. My sample data generation script, but whatever. I'll leave that for now. Okay, so we've got our kind of semi-table of events view here. Obviously, there's a lot we want to do with this, but it's fine for now. The whole thing, I kind of want to wrap this in another div here. And we're going to give this a bit of a slightly smaller width. Like width XL. How wide is that? Yeah, like that. Seems fine. And then we could also give it a margin auto. So it's centered. So here we have our table view. Now let's add the interactivity here to expand and collapse these. So is there a collapsey thing in ShadCN? Just gotta scan through the list here. I mean, field? What is a field? I don't know what that is. Kind of curious. It's probably not what we want. Just kind of curious what it is. Same thing with hover card. Same thing with empty. What the heck does empty mean? That's funny. There's collapsible. That's probably what we actually want. I mean, it could theoretically be conceptualized as an accordion as well. If you think of it as an accordion, it's like each of the events, you click on one, it expands that one and collapses the other ones. But then you could never have more than one expanded at a time, which feels a little weird. Unless you have multiple to allow multiple to be open at the same time. I mean, it could be an accordion. That could work fine. Or it could be multiple collapses. I will say I kind of like the transition on the accordion event more. How it smoothly expands and collapses. This one just like pops up and down like blah, blah, blah. But I feel like collapse is more semantically appropriate for what we actually want to do here. Empty. Oh, that's empty. Okay. That makes sense. What's hover card? Oh, okay. That also makes sense. That we might need to use that too, actually, for some things. Kind of. Field. Okay, that's used for forms. Fine. All right, let's start with collapsible here. And, you know, whatever. See how it goes. So let's add it. It's an interesting thing with ShadCN, how you have to do this like command to add your components. If you're not familiar, kind of the idea with ShadCN is it's sort of like a cross between a framework, like a UI framework like Bootstrap or Blueprint, but it's also like a scaffolding toolkit. So instead of like installing the dependency and it has all of the elements in like your node modules as dependencies, it's like you run this scaffolding command and it creates the component right in your code. So now like I have this collapsible component here. It uses Radix UI for a lot of its backend interactivity. Radix UI is a headless component library, so it doesn't come with any UI. And then, you know, in this example, ShadCN is just like wrapping it pretty naively, but usually, like if we look at button, for example, ShadCN will wrap the Radix UI headless component with styles. But the nice thing about this is because these styles are actually in our code, they're not somewhere in node modules, we can tweak this however we want. It becomes our code instead of like somebody else's code. So it's kind of just a really interesting approach for UI stuff. I don't know. It has its pros and cons for sure. In any case, what we want to do here is now make this collapsible. So collapsible. And we need to make sure to import it from our component and not the Radix UI. And then there's going to be collapsible trigger. Which is actually going to be all of this, right? And then there is our collapsible content, which for now I'm just going to do yo. So now, if I click on one of these, yo, yo, yo. I wish that it had more of a cursor pointer kind of thing going on though. And this really could go right up here. And we can get rid of this div. And here we could also add like, is interactive a thing? No. Is like clickable? No. Pointer. Cursor. I mean, we can do cursor pointer, and that makes it like, you see my cursor now is the finger, the hand with the finger, to make it look clickable. But we really need more than that, but this is okay for now. And how do I tell if it's collapsed? Do I have to control the state myself? Probably. That's fine though. Okay. That's the advantage of having this event row already defined in its own subcomponent here. We can easily manage this state ourselves. And then collapsible here, you know, we just do this. Got the example right there. And the point of doing that then is we could have something over here, div, which is like, and we could do class name W2 or something. And this could be like open question mark. If it's open, we would show a minus. Otherwise, we would show a plus. That kind of a thing, right? And really, we should probably be using icons or something for this. But again, we're just working towards it. One step at a time here. Okay. So now let's do our table in our collapsible content. So here we actually are going to want like a grid layout is how I'm going to do this. Technically, I could use an actual literal table here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use a grid. So we have our grid container is actually going to be this class name grid. And grid calls two. We have two columns, one for the key, one for the value, like host name, my site, user agent, blah, 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 refer, blah, blah, blah. So then we have, what do we have? Div host name, div event.hostname, right? And the same thing, we would have user agent. And for now, we'll just do event.userAgent. And then we have refer, event.refer. And we're not going to persist that unfortunate typo in the refer header into our app. Okay, so now you see we kind of have this thing. This should have a colon. Doesn't really look like what we want it to look like, though. This should also have a colon. So how can we fix that? Well, first of all, this class name tech or align, what is it? Align, right? Honestly, with the Tailwind, it's like if I don't have my autocomplete, I do not know. Text right. It's so hard to remember all of these like custom Tailwind classes. I don't know. I don't know if I like Tailwind or not. But what really helps a lot is having this VS Code extension for that as well. This intelligent Tailwind CSS tooling for VS Code, where you can like autocomplete and you can also hover over the class. It tells you what the actual styles are. So helpful. You don't have to look at the docs every 10 seconds. AI is also super helpful for that, by the way, if you're using AI. Okay. And then this would have like gap too as well. Let's put some gap in there. Yeah. Yeah. And then how do I... What does this do? Grid auto flow column dense? I don't know. That's interesting. That's not what I want, though. So how do I specify the like FR value for the grid rows and columns? You know what I mean? Like I want the key to be a fixed width and then the value to take up the extra size instead of being like 50-50. Probably grid template columns, I guess. Oh, grid calls value. Okay. Grid calls. And then, yeah, we would probably do a fixed value. 200 pix, 1 FR. Didn't work. Why didn't it work? Let's take a look at what we've got going on here. Grid, templates, columns, 300 pix, 1 FR. Oh, it did work. It just, the 300 pix is really close to the middle, so it looks the same. This should be really more like 150 pix. Like that. That's kind of more what I was picturing. Even less, really. And the reason we can do this as a hard-coded value, of course, is because the keys here do not change. Hostname, user agent, refer, those don't change. We know the length of those strings. I mean, internationalization aside, which we're not worrying about for this app, we know the length for those strings. These other things could be super long, potentially. But the keys will not change, right? And refer, we can just not even include that if it doesn't exist, right? We could be like event.refer. If there is one, then include this business. Otherwise, don't. Just like that. So now we don't have that like empty chunky thing. And really this gap, can I do like gap X 4, 3, gap Y1. Yeah, fine. And then I also want like an M1 around the collapsible content. Yeah, fine. Maybe MT0. Fine. And really this whole, each of these whole things is going to have a class name M2. That, did that break something or was it already broken? Like what happened to these now? Am I crazy? Like why is this centered now? Did I break that without noticing? So I wonder if these need to go on a subdiv instead of the collapsible trigger. I wonder if that will help. It did not help. So what is going on here? So we've got our button. Our data. Okay, let's undo what we just did. So now the parent of the collapsible is the right width. The child trigger is not the right width though. Does this need to have a width 100 or width full on it? It does. And then why are these all centered? What's making this centered? My mic is kind of in the way of the CSS things here. Let me move it. From button. Okay, well that's easy enough fix, I guess. We just have to explicitly override it. Text right. Left, I mean text left. Yeah, like that. But then this one, I kind of want to be text right. And these really need a gap of more than one. Gap 2. Fine, whatever. There will be a lot of adjustment here. We're definitely not going to get this page perfect tonight. But we're doing some stuff. Okay, so the other thing I do want to add though is, I want to make sure we've got all the data in here. And part of that is we need the other properties that are derived from the user agent. So let's add those. Going to need 3 more divs. Div, and I'll just put the property in here and then copy paste it, I guess. Event.browser. Event.operating system. And event.device type. And I kind of doing more broad to more narrow, right? Like device type is the broadest, and then operating system is narrower, and then browser is narrowest. If that makes sense. Not that it really matters. So that's great. And now we can see that here. But because these are divs, they're rendering inside here like each one as a block element in its own line. And we don't want that. And we could just make them spans, and that would be fine. But I'm actually going to make this a flex. A flex row. Flex row. Gap 2. So now we can see it like that. Right? And I wonder if I should make them, put them in like little cards or something. Like what if I did like device type, OS, browser. Put a little label on them. And then put those labels in like a little tag component. What would that be called? What the heck is item? Just some random components in here. Content with media, title, description, and actions. Huh. That's interesting. I mean, it's not what we want, but it's interesting. Or is it what we want? For now, it's not what we want. I mean, it could be like a tiny card. But I don't think that's really what we want either. We'll just we'll think about that next time. There's definitely some polish we're going to want to do to this UI. But I kind of want to percolate, let it percolate a little bit, come back to it, and decide kind of how we feel about the whole thing. So yeah, let's just do that for now. So let us, first of all, I'm going to, usually when I do these ShadCN UI scaffoldings, I like to add those separately. So this would be like add collapsible. Then, we could do like update mockup or events page. then we could do like implement events page with basic UI. Okay, great. So the other thing though is we're going to want to update our script, and maybe I'll just do this a little bit and then wrap up for the night because we're kind of reaching our 2-hour level here. So this script, it's kind of janky and it does some randomness, I guess you could say. Actually, one thing this is making me realize is I really want this data to be sorted. Let's do that first. So this events, I'll just do up here like const sorted events equals events.toSorted based on a dot start time minus b dot start time. I always can never remember which direction it's supposed to go. Let's see if that starts with like the earliest ones or the later ones. Okay, so that was sorted ascending. We want sorted descending in reverse chronological order. So let's switch that around. B dot start time minus A dot start time. Okay, so now we've got this in reverse chronological order here. Then we can see for these events, a lot of them have no script, but a lot of them, or some of them don't. Really, it should be the other way around, where some of them have no script, but most of them don't. And then these URLs are just, you know, this random URL value here, random number between 0 and 100. And I want it to be something else, but it's kind of hard to make random URLs that like seem good. What if I did something ridiculous like this? A times that. You can do that, right? Does that work in JavaScript? I thought you could do that. Does that not work? I guess we wouldn't know. I'd have to run the script. I can't just keep refreshing the page. Now I need to refresh the page. Oh, yeah, I'm getting these nans. That's not really what we want. That is not what we want. We want to do a dot times. Is that a thing? Times a dot repeat. I knew there was some way to do it. Kind of weird. But kind of the point here is I want to see larger URLs. I want to see a variable length of different URLs. So we can see how that looks in the UI. And as expected, it looks horrible. Horrible. Let's fix that. So, we need to overflow this column, this one. Overflow X auto, right? Right, but we don't want the scroll bars. X hidden. Yes. But then I don't really like that either. I might make this a fixed width too, like L, G, or MD. Does that seem insane? No, it's not insane, but it's a bit too big. Still a bit too big. How do I do this then? So if that's grow, I mean, I could make this a grid. Maybe I should make this a grid. Let's do that. So grid gap 2, fine, whatever. Grid calls. We've got width 2, which is 8 pixels. And then this one is 40 pixels. And then this one is 192 pixels. And then one FR. And then this one is 40 pixels. Wait. Wait, that's not really gonna work though, is it? Oh, actually, it works. Okay, that's working. Looks like working to me. And then we also need this to have, we can get rid of all these widths now. That's redundant. And we can get rid of the grow. And this also should have like text overflow, or what is it? Ellipses? Text ellipses. So we get our little dots. Fine. Okay. Let us amend the last commit with this. We'll also update this data script. Update data script with long URLs and fewer no script events. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. With that, I'd probably better wrap up here for the night. And let me do a push before I forget. Push. All right. And with that, I think we're all done. Thanks, y'all, for dropping by, and I'll see you next time. Adios.